international education sector. Therese Andrews is responsible for developing, improving, and updating the IPC and IMYC. Sneha Rethatha is an early years consultant and international outreach and development manager for the Middle East and is based in Dubai. I'll hand over to Fieldwork.
Good morning, everyone. This is Therese. Thank you so much for being with us today in what's a very uncertain time, as Cheryl mentioned. So we're very grateful to have you with us this morning. I just talk you through the agenda that we have for this morning. We're going to look first at fieldwork education and just a little bit about what we do at the international curriculum. And then we'll look at the three curriculums. So we'll have the IEYC, the early years, the IPC for primary, and then we'll move on to the IMYC for 11 to 14-year-olds. So fieldwork education has been improving learning in schools for more than 30 years. And we do this through consultancy, through our curriculum, and also we support this with our professional learning range for schools and through our rigorous accreditation process. Support schools is shaped around the developmental needs of each learning age group, and we aim to strengthen children's moral, social and cultural development. And from the very, very beginning of fieldwork education, our focus has been on helping schools to improve learning, and we've since supported thousands of schools in over 90 countries globally. Moving on to our curriculum, the first curriculum product that we developed and began to sell to schools was the IPC, or the International Primary Curriculum, and this was introduced in the year 2000, so we are celebrating its 20th birthday this year, and it's been one of the fastest growing international programs in the world. It was originally written for 14 schools that were owned by the oil company Shell. Then it's expanded into other international and state schools in the 20-year period, and it's now present in more than 1,000 schools in over 90 countries. The IMYC, the International Middle Years Curriculum, was subsequently introduced in 2011 in response to demand from the IPC schools asking for a curriculum to meet the needs of learners beyond primary. So we developed the IMYC using neuroscientific research on the teenage brain and how it learns, and it's been designed with these needs in mind. And the IMYC is now used in more than 100 schools in over 50 countries. And then finally, the IEYC, the International Early Years Curriculum, was introduced in 2016 after new research and feedback from member schools demonstrated that early years settings needed their own curriculum to meet the needs of children at this crucial stage of development. The IEYC is now used in over 500 schools and early years settings in more than 60 countries. So these three products are what we're committed to at Fieldwork Education, and we help schools to improve learning through these curriculum products. The learning goals for the international curriculum were developed using benchmarking from well-regarded national curriculum from all over the world. And this includes international learning goals, which are quite unique to our curriculum and promote the concept of international mindedness. And as you can see, if you were to log onto our website, you'd be able to access this map. And this map gives you an idea of where our schools are located for each curriculum. So you can see the colour for each curriculum. And altogether, we're working with more than 15,000 teachers in over 1,000 schools across 90 different countries. So we do have quite a large global reach. In terms of the content of this webinar, thinking about English curriculum, aligning with the international curriculum, this slide illustrates how that aligns. So you can see the top line in red is the English national curriculum, and then the second line going from blue to green to dark green is the Fieldwork Education International Curriculum. So we've got the IEYC from age 2 to 6, IPC going from age 5 to 11, and IMYC going from age 11 to 14. There are a number of aspects that tie our different curriculum products together. So even though they're three different curriculum, then they're aligned in their ethos, in their global outlook, and the idea of being international and having international mindedness. in the shared understanding of learning, which we break down into knowledge, skills and understanding in the IPC and IMYC, and in the pedagogy as well. And one of the important things about our curriculum is its metacognitive aspect. And a common misconception about metacognition is that it's only developed effectively in older students and young adults. But the research shows that children as young as 3 have been able to engage in a range of metacognitive and self-regulatory behaviours, such as setting themselves goals and checking their understanding. And the metacognition that they display represents higher order thinking, and therefore is more important than cognition or subject knowledge. And we should look to develop both at the same time. So that's just one of the many aspects that we think is really, really important in the development of our curriculum, and what we ensure aligns right through the curriculum journey at the international curriculum. So now I'll pass over to my colleague Sneha, who will be able to talk to you about IEYC specifically.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I can see that was there a question? Oh, it says good morning, okay. So I'll just jump right into the introduction for the IEYC. As my colleague Therese mentioned, the International Early Years curriculum was introduced in 2016 after new research and feedback from member schools that demonstrated that early year settings needed their own curriculum to meet the needs of the children at such a crucial stage of development. So the IEYC is now used in over 500 schools and early year settings in more than 60 countries. And we believe, for the IEYC, we believe that the children are not passive receptors, but are born naturally curious and ready to explore the world. And they construct their knowledge and they develop new skills through experiences and interactions with others. The IEYC has also been designed so that teachers scaffolded and differentiated learning activities to help spark children's imagination and enabling interests and inquiry to flourish through contextualized learning. And this type of learning inquiry provides greater opportunities for children to learn independently, opening up multiple possibilities. Oh, you can't hear me? I've just seen the chat. Some can hear clearly, some can't hear me. Is it any better? You can hear, you can hear. Is it just Sharon? You can't hear. Are you happy for me to continue if the majority are okay with the clarity of sound? Perfect. Okay, I'll continue. Sharon, this is being recorded as well, so you'll be able to access it if you can't hear at the moment. But if it's all right, then I will continue. Okay. Right. So we were at the point where I was saying that this type of inquiry provides greater opportunities for children to learn independently and interdependently, and this is actually one of the learning strands that is embedded in all the units for the IEYC, and it opens up multiple possibilities for personal, social and emotional development. So the IEYC, as you can see on this slide, we have 18 units of learning so far. We started off with just 5 units in 2016, and as the popularity grew, the units will continue to be added with more activities, and of course has 4 learning strands that underpin all the learning and development. Each learning strand was developed after extensive evaluation of the learning experiences that are regarded internationally as developmentally appropriate for this age range. And each of the 4 learning strands describes what children will experience and learn about through contextualized activities, and these activities are woven into the IEYC units of learning. Each IEYC unit of learning has also been carefully designed around a central theme. So as you can see, you've got This Is Me, Ocean Wonders, The Brilliant Bug Ball, etc. And around the central theme, they holistically are linking all 4 learning strands to relevant and engaging activities. And these can be adapted, of course, and extended to meet individual needs of children. And the 4 learning strands can be used to guide teachers' planning so that there is rigor to what and how the children are learning. As you can see, the diagram where it says a child-centered IEYC learning strands and learning process. The entry point, for those of you who may not be so familiar with the IEYC unit, is planned and enables for children to explore new experiences in exciting ways. So each unit has its own unique entry point, and each IEYC unit of learning has a suggested entry point idea, which can be adapted according to children's developmental needs. And the IEYC encourages teachers to be creative and use their own ideas to enhance this entry point. So it's in no way prescriptive and can be adapted and extended according to your local context, which country you're based in. And of course, after the entry point comes capturing curiosity. And this is achieved when teachers are aware of what children are curious to learn, and then the unit is adapted to enhance these opportunities. And of course, children come with their own knowledge base that they've learnt at home. And each class will be unique. So the activities and opportunities are planned according to each class, each child's interests, and so forth. After capturing curiosity, we go on to enabling the environment. And this is the process of planning and developing relevant indoor and outdoor learning spaces to create the positive climate for inquiry and learning to take place. The big picture provides the children with an overview of each unit of learning and prepares children for a new learning experience, whilst at the same time helps establish connections with previous learning. And it gives teachers an overview of why the theme is important and links to child development. Then we move on to the explore and express activities that are within the units. And these aim to provide children with opportunities to engage in activities and to have been holistically designed around the 4 learning strands. And then we go to the exit point at the end of the IEYC, and this exit point provides opportunities for children to reflect and share and celebrate what they have learned. Exit points are also used to share and demonstrate learning with parents and the wider community. So we could have a celebration as such of the unit that they've been learning about for 4 to 6 weeks, or even longer in some cases, where everybody can join in and celebrate the children's learning. And of course, bring their own experiences and share their own communities' celebrations and ideas with the children. So moving on to the next slide. So here we've got the mind map. So similar links, this mind map essentially maps out the structure of the unit, and similar links can be made to EYFS development matters. So as you can see on the mind map, it includes learning blocks for each unit and the activities linked to each learning block and the color-coded learning strands that each learning block will cover. So links can similarly be made to the EYFS development matters areas. So of course the areas for EYFS are physical development, communication and language, personal, social and emotional development, literacy, mathematics, understanding the world, and expressive arts and design. The IEYC learning strands are independence and interdependence, communicating, inquiring, and healthy living and physical well-being. Moving on to the next slide. So as you can see on this slide, we have a document available on My Fieldwork, and this cross-references the EYFS with the IEYC learning strands and outcomes. And it's available if you log into My Fieldwork, those who are implementing the IEYC, and you click on resources and then documents, and you can select national curricula and the IEYC, or simply click on the link that's available on this slide, and it should lead you to this cross-referencing document for the IEYC and the EYFS. Now, I'm sure all of you are aware that there's going to be a change to the early learning goals for the EYFS from September 2021. And some schools, of course, are choosing to roll this change out this year in September 2020. So taken from the document that was released by the UK government, so from September 25th, schools across the country, this was last year, were set to trial the revised early learning goals. And the key measures teachers use to decide how prepared children are to begin year one at the end of reception year. And the changes were aimed at reducing teachers' workload to free up more time to support children's early skills and produce engaging lessons. So the four guiding principles for the EYFS will remain the same. The prime and specific areas remain the same, as do the characteristics of effective learning. However, the early learning goals, still 17 in number, however, they have changed. And they will be revised in this cross-referencing document, as the changes are also made to the development matter statements. So the EYFS early learning goals in this document, from I think page 18 onwards, have been cross-referenced with the IEYC learning outcomes, and this entire table will be reviewed in line with the new early learning goals. In addition to the ELGs being revised, as mentioned, according to the EYFS reforms, the development matter statements relating to the 7 areas of learning will also be streamlined and revised, and will need to be cross-referenced within this document as well for Phase A and Phase B outcomes. As I said, some schools will be opting to using this new framework on a voluntary basis from this September, but the statutory framework will be out in all schools who are using the EYFS from September 2021. So the timeline, essentially, the pilot scheme in 24 schools was concluded in July 2019. The consultation from this pilot scheme was released in October 2019, and to last until the 31st of January 2020. So after January, we've had a massive global issue. So I believe the reformed framework will still be released soon, but we haven't got a date yet for the official documentation to come out. But this document that's available on my fieldwork will be updated as soon as we have access to the new document that will be released by the government. Moving on to the next slide. So as you can see here, I've just created a table just to sort of break down the prime and specific areas for the EYFS and compare them to the current early learning goals and the new learning goals. So of course, this is available to everybody on the UK government website for development matters for foundation years. But just to give you an overview, that the prime and specific areas remain the same. The current early learning goals and aspects are available in the second column, and then the new early learning goals and aspects that will be rolled out from September in the third, just to give you a comparison of maybe how things are changing or how they may be broken down going forward. In the next table, I have broken down the IEYC learning strands and knowledge, skills and understanding outcomes, and cross-reference them to the new EYFS early learning goals. So this is just a draft table at the moment. Of course, this will be refined further once the document is officially released. But as you can see, the IEYC learning strands, for example, communicating and inquiring, can be easily cross-referenced to speaking and listening. Of course, development matters statements are a lot more thorough, and the outcomes for communicating and inquiring within the IEYC are also much more thorough. But yes, as you can see, if you go, I was just looking at the comments, actually somebody else can't hear, but I will continue. Okay, so you can see as communicating and inquiring can be cross-referenced to speaking and listening. Healthy living and physical well-being, independence and interdependence can be linked to gross motor and fine motor skills, and so forth, if you look through the table. So this is just a rough breakdown of what it might look like once the new document is released. But of course, once we have a more thorough view of the development matter statements, the document that's available on my fieldwork will be updated accordingly. So in this slide here is just an example of how schools are choosing to add observations in early years and track assessments. So we recently have launched a collaboration with Tapestry, which is an online learning journal provider. And the IEYC curriculum is now available on Tapestry for people to use and make their observations for early years, as well as link them to the IEYC learning strands as well as the EYFS, so you can simultaneously track and monitor assessments for both curricula at the same time, because there was nothing like this previously, schools were using their own methods of assessment and tracking for IEYC and early years. But through this medium, I mean, this is an option for schools. It's not something that's mandatory, but it is our first collaboration with a learning journal provider, and the IEYC at the moment is only available on Tapestry. So you can add observations and track assessments via this provider and link them to both the IEYC and EYFS learning outcomes. And we will continue to collaborate with Tapestry. The more popular it gets, we've been asked by several people to include analysis screens for the assessments, which is something we'll definitely look into the future, to look at the analysis of progress for children across the Phase A and Phase B learning outcomes.
Thank you, Sneha.
That's it for me. Oh, sorry, I think actually we moved on. There's one slide, there was one more slide there, but I think it's gone. But yes, that was it.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name's Jacqueline. I am the curriculum manager for the IPC with Fieldwork Education. So I'm going to give you an overview of the IPC programme and then look at some of the connections to the English National Curriculum for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. So in general, this is the bigger picture of IPC. It's structured around 3 areas, which are subject, personal, and international learning. For each of these areas, we have specific goals, and these change from milepost 1 to milepost 2 to milepost 3, which are our 3 age sections that we have. The subject and international goals include knowledge, so things that children should know about, skills, things they should be able to do, and understanding that they should develop throughout that milepost. The personal goals refer to the characteristics that children need to develop that we consider will help them to thrive in the future and in their current learning situations. The international learning goes beyond just the specific goals that we provide, and it also aims to develop international mindedness. This would be whether they were in a local school, in a state school, where they'll be looking at international perspectives and understanding what's happening around the world, and then an international school where it might be just about understanding why people are different and similar in their own classrooms. So I'm going to say a little bit more about each section. So these are our personal goals. There are 8 personal goals, and these should be developed as part of the units of learning, but equally they should be part of the school culture. Most of our schools create a statement around what they would like as an outcome for their learners at the end of their time in primary school. So they may add to these if they're a particular type of school, but we expect to see these 8 core ideas being developed. So our subject in international learning goals, the knowledge, skills and understanding, are addressed through our units. We have 131 thematic units, and there you can see our 3 sets of mileposts. There is a little bit of flexibility with the mileposts because we know that some schools start their learning at different ages. So they want to finish milepost 1, but they may start at the age of 6 instead of the age of 5. You can see some pictures there, which has some samples of our units that we have available. The units last between 3 and 12 weeks, and most of them involve 3 or more subjects, which include specific international lessons. We do have an exception to this, which is our science units, which I'll talk about later. Learning in all our units follows a specific process in a similar way to the IEYC. So we have a hook at the beginning in the same way that they capture curiosity and develop through things. But our system has been designed to be more age appropriate for the 5 to the 11-year-olds. So after the entry point, the hook activity, which hopefully motivates them for learning, then they will move on and we'll do a knowledge harvest so we know where we're starting with the children before we actually go into the main body of the unit. We always provide a big picture for teachers, which is that background information. And we also then have what we call research and record activities. The research is where they will be finding out more, looking for knowledge, developing understanding, practicing skills. And then we will also have the recording. Now, recording is thinking about how children process their learning, how they share it with others, how they take records of it, how they might present it, those kinds of things. And after all of this learning, they will work towards what's called an exit point. This is their celebration of learning. Many schools invite parents to these so that they can get involved, and they might get taught by the learners, or they might get an insight into the relevance of the things that they've been learning over the previous few weeks. We do have a route plan, which I'm going to explain to you, which relates to the English National Curriculum and the coverage. But if you have flexibility of curriculum coverage, then you can use our 131 units to build your own route plan. And we have an online system where you can just drag and drop and arrange them over the 2 years of the milepost. And this will help you then check for balance of coverage across all subjects. And it will help you see whether you've covered all the learning goals or not. So this is our route plan for those schools that wish to cover the whole of the English National Curriculum. So this is a recommended route plan that was revised with the NC14 objectives. So it covers the science and the foundation subjects. And if you want to be confident that you're covering everything, this is the route plan that we would recommend. We do have some schools who make some tweaks to this and some adjustments because they've decided that, for example, some of our science in Key Stage 1 actually goes above and beyond what's expected. So they've decided to swap that out and replace it with something else. We do have cross-reference documents, which I will show you in a moment, and that shows you exactly which objectives are covered so that you can see how it relates to the national curriculum. So this is just an example from our milepost 3 from our older learners. And you can see, so we have our units written across the top, and then on the right-hand side, the NC14 objectives. And each of the units that is included in the route plan, you can see those blocks show you where it is covered. So if you want to cover your geography, then you need to do the unit Earth as an Island, because that's where the main coverage is. Some of our units were designed with the national curriculum in mind. However, we have a much broader range than that with our 131 units. So the IPC does not provide units that covers all aspects of English and maths. We find that most schools follow a required or selected and brought in paid for programme of study. However, we do have English and maths goals within the IPC. And so in the thematic units, we provide opportunities to use or extend maths and language skills and knowledge as they're working through the units. So here's an example of 3 of our science-specific units. These are focused on the changing materials strand. This enables children to progress through the strand, revisiting and extending their knowledge, practicing their skills, and developing understanding. These units could be done at any time within the milepost, so freeze it in year 1 or 2, shake it in year 3 or 4, bake it in year 5 or 6. Some schools choose to do it at the same time, and when they have their exit point, they'll have a whole school exit point around changing materials and maybe set up a science fair showing the different things that they've been doing. So the national curriculum programs of study are set out by year. However, the expectation is that they are covered across the key stage, which is why you can have that flexibility of approaching these units in either of the years of the milepost. We have similar sets of these for forces, animals and habitats, and plants and growing and changing as well. So to support with science understanding, whether you have everything covered, we have specific science cross-reference documents. These refer to the units that are included in the recommended plan. If you decide to use your own route plan and include other ones of our units, you would have to do a cross-reference for yourself, but you can see how the format works, so it'd be very easy to take on. So this shows you the different strands in our milepost 1 science and how they relate to the NC14 objectives. Now, special to the IPC are 3 units which we call the Brainwave Units. The recommendation is that these are done first at the beginning of the milepost. The idea is that they're focused on learning to learn, and they'll help children understand how learning happens and the effort that's actually involved in learning. It also introduces them to the basics of brain function and how that connects to the learning. These follow exactly the same learning process as our other thematic units. So they will begin with the hook, our entry point, and they will go through the research and recording, and then they will have an exit point as well. Some schools choose to split this unit, and they'll do some at the beginning of year 1, some at the beginning of year 2, and so on. Now, our final part is to do with international learning. So unique to the IPC are the international learning goals, and these drive learning about what we call the host, home or heritage, and adopted countries. These will be different depending on the school context. For international schools, the host and home country provides the learner with connections to where they currently live and where they consider home. For some schools, the home and host country is the same for the majority of learners. In these schools, the school may choose, or the class may choose, to adopt a relevant country for a specific unit. For example, if they're looking at rainforests, they may adopt Brazil for that unit. Some schools also choose to have a country of interest for the entire year, and this can actually connect to how they're supporting through charitable contributions, pen pal connections, and other things like that. The main aim is to broaden the exposure to multiple perspectives and to develop empathy and respect through considering commonalities and differences of experience. So I'm going to hand over to Therese. I don't think there's any questions on the IPC at the moment, and she will then explain about the IMYC.
Thank you, Jackie, and hi everyone. I'm back again. This is Therese. So if we move over to the IMYC, and this is for students aged 11 to 14, and there are many similarities between what you've just heard from Jackie and about the IPC and the IMYC. Obviously, the main difference is that the IMYC has been written for a secondary school environment where the child moves between classes. So it requires the teachers to adapt to help the learning journey of each child. So in the IMYC, we do have 30 units, which is 10 per year group. And you can see here there's the names of some of the units, which we call the theme. So, for example, for the theme of adaptability, that might be what the teachers refer to the unit as. But the most important thing about the theme is actually what the big idea is. So each theme has a big idea attached to it. And you can see that the one for adaptability is demonstrated by the ability to change, alter, or cope with new environments or circumstances. And each subject teacher will be required to make connections to that big idea through the learning activities that they plan for their class. So the idea is that the children can make connections to this overarching concept, which all of their subjects feed into. They do still have an entry point and an exit point, as Jackie explained in the learning process, and I'll come on to that on the next slide. But important for teachers to know is that on our member website, on My Fieldwork, there is a route planning tool where schools can drag and drop units to show the coverage of learning goals for lots of different routes. And the learning goals for the IMYC have been mapped with the English National Curriculum for 2013. So it's possible to check coverage using the document, and I'll come on to that in a minute as well. So this is the learning process for the IMYC, and you can see that the big idea is in the centre because that's what all teachers should be connecting to in their subjects. So they're delivered through this consistent format, and this process has been developed in relation to neuroeducational research on the teenage brain and the ways in which teenagers learn. And some parts of the process are delivered in whole year groups. So we would encourage schools to run their entry points and exit points with the entire cohort of students, whereas some parts are delivered at a class level. So knowledge harvest, learning activities, reflective journaling, can all be delivered from a class perspective. This is the mapping document for the IMYC and the English National Curriculum, and it was written in 2014 to account for the changes that were introduced in 2013, and it's available to all of our members through our member website, My Fieldwork. So the table here shows the subjects that are included in the English National Curriculum, which is the column on the left, compared with the IMYC subjects, which is the column on the right. And there's a section for each of these subjects in the document outlining where there is alignment and specific areas where schools may have to adapt the curriculum to meet the specific content of the English National Curriculum. So if I just show you an example, so this is an example from Design Technology in the English National Curriculum and the Technology Learning Goals of the IMYC. So all of the subjects outlined on the previous slide have a table like this one where the English National Curriculum content is mapped against the IMYC content. And you can see here that there is quite a lot of alignment between the two curricula. If I show you this slide, so you can see here that there's some content that's not covered by the IMYC learning goals, and this is identified in the document. So this is an example from citizenship, where there's some content in the English National Curriculum that's not covered specifically by the IMYC. However, what we suggest to schools is that since the big ideas are so overarching understandings, it's possible for the school to develop their own ways of fitting in these English National Curriculum learning goals into the big ideas, and it shouldn't be too difficult to find a suitable place for them to fit into. We don't believe that it's a very time-consuming process, and we're happy to work with schools on that where they have to cover content. And I can see there's a question from Olivia. So Olivia, we haven't mapped our curriculum against the IB, no. I'm sorry, we haven't done that. And Jackie's saying that the IB scope and sequence are optional, so we haven't mapped against those. But I'm glad to hear your feedback on the IPC and that the school enjoyed the impact, so thank you very much. So that brings us really to the end of the content that we were aiming to cover today. So I think we're open now to taking questions if anyone has any about any of the three curricula or anything that we've discussed this morning. So please feel free to type in your questions and we will try to answer them. I can see a few people type in. But thank you everyone for attending this morning. We do know it's a strange time to be a teacher, and we appreciate that you're all very busy and your workloads have increased recently. David, in answer to your question, or actually, Jackie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so there's no requirement to do the SATs as far as we're concerned, but it might depend on whether you have any HMI inspections, because I know some international schools volunteer for those. But as far as I'm aware, the SATs are not completed externally from the UK anyway. Some schools choose to do ISAs and other kind of standardized tracking kind of exams and tests and things. We do not provide any of those. We don't encourage those, but we accept that schools do them. Okay, so we know that this is a challenge because we don't actually provide tasks and things that support the English learning. This is partly because of the detail that comes in to a required English curriculum with all of the spelling and the grammar and punctuation and things like this. So one of the things that we're trying to work on more is making connections to our thematic units and the types of reading and the types of writing and the types of speaking and listening that schools might have to do. So we've actually recently produced what we call a text type writing guide, which has about 40 different text types in it. So things like persuasion, instructional writing, myths and legends, so both non-fiction and fiction. And we're starting to map those against our unit so that you can see the opportunities to use the kind of skills that they're learning. So, for example, if they're learning about myths and legends as part of their English, because they're reading myths and legends, they're looking at how they're created, the types of settings they have, the language they use, we would then recommend that you would do our Stories People Tell unit, because there's lots of overlap between them. So it is starting to be developed further, and it's one of the things we're working on. Okay, so in the David, I'm assuming you're referring to the IPC. So what we say is there should be between 6 to 10 hours a week. So that averages out for lots of people for 8 hours a week. But it does make a difference as to whether you include all of the music that we provide, the art that we provide, and the PE that we provide within our thematic units, because we know that some schools have subject-specific teachers for those areas, so they might do some of the lessons through the thematic units and some of their own lessons as well. For example, they might need to do athletics when they're preparing for a sports day. So there will be differences from school to school, but we would recommend around 8 hours a week. Yes, so the text type writing, guys, if you go to the documents, I'll just bring it up so I can tell you exactly where it is, hopefully. And if you go to the documents section, then so resources, documents, and the support documents, text type guides for writing.
I'm just wondering if there are any more questions for us on anything related to the IEYC, IPC or IMYC. If not, thank you so much everyone for being here this morning, and please feel free to email us if you have any further questions that you think of. So thank you all.
Thank you very much to all three of you, Jacqueline and Sneha and Therese. I was just reading David's question. Sorry, lots of questions, but guidelines on how to assess and track in IPC.
Okay, so we actually have an assessment tool that we didn't talk about this morning, and our assessment is called the Assessment for Improving Learning, and that's really focused on the skills. So that's the bit that we provide so that you can track and you can check that the children are experiencing the skills, practicing the skills, and then they can self-assess, and the teacher can assess using rubrics that we provide as well. So some schools then put that into a tracking system, for example, Classroom Monitor or Target Tracker, and they use that so that they can keep track of the skills that are being developed through each milepost. We would say for knowledge that this should be assessed through simple kinds of tests. And the reason we do that is because of the retrieval effect. The idea is that if we keep asking the children to retrieve the knowledge, then it becomes more embedded in their memory, and it's actually something they know, not just something that they remember for a couple of weeks. With understanding, we currently say that we evaluate understanding rather than assessing it, because understanding looks very different from one child to another child, because it's often based on experience, connections they can make between learning. So that comes down very much to teacher judgment and thinking throughout the period of a unit, do we feel that the child has developed their understanding with regard to the particular understanding goals that they've been working on?
Thank you very much. That was very, very helpful. Please remember that this webinar has been recorded and will be accessible through our website, bsme.org.uk. And that is probably all the questions we have right now, and we will say a goodbye now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank